Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the modern newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. Okay, let's meet the panel. Today we've got David Morton. He's the headmaster of King's School in Gloucester. The school currently has 750 pupils, 230 staff, and a turnover in excess of 13.5 million. What does the government increase on VAT for independent schools mean for King's School and also the wider education system in Gloucestershire? So we'll find out all about that from David. We have Rob Lister, he's the Sales and Marketing Director of Lister Unified Communications. The Stonehouse-based company has 40 staff, a turnover of 6 million, and the hot ticket in town for the communications industry now is IoT, the Internet of Things. But what is it and how will it affect all the businesses and ourselves as well? We have Greg Pilley, he's the Managing Director of Stroud Brewery, established in 2006. It was a passion project for Greg. It makes great tasting, ethical, organic beer. The company employs 65 staff and a turnover of approximately 2.5 million. He also has a fantastic restaurant as well. The hospitality industry is a really, really tough one. So we'll find out about from Greg the rise of national insurance, the minimum wage, what is the effect of all these things on the brewery industry as well as himself, and how important is the Christmas period for his business. And finally, last but not least, we've got Andrew Malley, the property director of Dansfield Property Limited, the owners of the Five Valley Shopping Centre in Stroud. It's been an 8-year, £30 million project, and if anybody's been down there, it has absolutely transformed the whole site. I think personally it's amazing. So we'll find out all about that and also what's coming up next. So thanks everyone to the panel. We'll just have a quick look at the news, see what's making the headlines. Courtesy of the BBC. Okay, the Telegraph. PM drops pledges as economy stumbles. The Times. PM vows to stop NIMBY lobby and get building. The Eye. Starmer reset. PM tells public to judge him on whether living standards rise quickly in the UK. The Daily Mail. Starmer's bingo hall parade of buzzwords and political nerd speak. The Guardian. NHS facing a quadmatic of emergencies as winter bites. The Mirror. We're for it now. It's all very good, very promising, isn't it? The Metro. Smiling assassin. The Financial Times. Covalist bid puts Francis Suez in line to manage breakup of Thames Water. Probably didn't say that right, but hey ho. Okay, no Daily Star for the BBC. Let's start with you today, David. What have you picked out from the papers?
Good morning, Mark. I've picked out from the Eye a story which has been running all this week, which is quite interesting in schools, but also for businesses of the future. And that's around digital exams and whether pupils will be able to take their GCSEs, their A-levels online before too long. And the headline was that by 2030, Pearson, one of the big exam boards, is going to be able to offer this. And I think it's really interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's great that pupils who have SEN, who might find writing by hand at length or reading the question a bit trickier, will find that they've got assisted technology in the exam. So that's a positive for SEN pupils. But obviously, there isn't digital equality across schools and across society in the UK. And so we have to have a completely fair and level playing field when the pupils are sitting in the exam hall. So unless every school is able to offer them in the years leading up to their exam, access to computers and experience of writing and so on the laptop, it's not going to help some parts of society, which I think will be a real shame. So it's interesting to see that they're trying to head in the right direction. But the thing that struck me was it says 2030. The exam classes of 2030 who are taking their GCSEs are in year 7 at the moment already. They've got no idea that this is coming down the line. The curriculum isn't being changed. We haven't been given any official information about it. And so obviously it takes time to prepare children if they're going to sit public exams online in just a few years' time and they're in school already. So there's quite a lot of work to be done, I think, in this area.
Wow, didn't know anything about that whatsoever. What else have you got, David? Have you picked out anything else?
From the papers at the moment? Not particularly. I've got a good story from Punchline. I think we'll come back to that a little bit later on, if that's all right. I can tell you a bit more about the online exams if you want me to, but no, that's my kind of key headline, I think.
No worries. Thanks for that, David. Andrew, what have you picked out for us, please?
Well, I was very interested in the six commitments of the Labour government, and one in particular, which is about house building, the target of 1.5 million homes in this Parliament, 300,000 a year, which we haven't achieved for at least 2 decades. And a quick fix, it sounds great, but it's a far more complicated system than that speech gives it credit for. There's major issues with the Environment Agency. They need to be funded and geared up so that they don't prevent development because of flood risk, that there are prevention measures are in hand. Planning departments are underfunded, they've hardly any staff. There's no planning officers, highway officers, environmental officers. So there's a major task to recruit qualified people. There's also a major issue in reforming policy, because David Cameron's government introduced sort of the say of the local people and allowed sort of the local opinions to be counted more significantly. And it looks like that's going to go, and that you've referred to NIMBYs in the speech, that they're going to be ignored. And, we've got one good example of that only yesterday, Angela Rayner decided to overturn an inspector's decision and grant planning permission in a green belt for a major prison in Chorley against the council and the inspector's advice. So it started, and I think there's going to be a lot of people quite concerned about that, particularly as the planning system should to get it right, you have to lead, you have to allocate the right land. And if it's done in a rush, the land isn't allocated by the council, it's actually it's led by opportunity. Developers find the land that is the most opportune to develop, and in the absence of a better site that the council have already allocated, they're not going to be able to prevent that being developed. So the planning system takes time. It takes time to allocate sites in order of priority. And by rushing it, what will happen is sites will be selected by their availability and not by their suitability. And so I think people are going to start getting very upset in the next few years that applications are going to start getting pushed through in their neighbourhood, and the local planning department haven't got the staff. They've not had a chance to create a policy to allocate better land, and the say of local people will be ignored. So I think there's going to be a lot of news headlines in the next 5 years over planning decisions in areas, particularly rural areas like Gloucestershire.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, I don't know where they're going to find 1.5, the bricks to build 1.5 million houses, let alone the people and the skills and the plumbers and the eleckies and everything else. It's just, to me, Rob, I'm going to bring you in because you build houses. What's the chance of this happening?
Oh, impossible, isn't it? As you say, the raw materials, the labour required to do it, the cash flow, everything is stacked heavily against it. It's a lovely ambition, and of course we'd like to see it happen, but best of luck.
Yeah, I can't see it themselves. And you're right, Andrew. I think it's going to cause so much problems going down the tracks. I think they're making a rod for their own back. Thanks ever so much for that. Greg, let's bring you in. Great to see you again. What have you picked out from the papers?
Well, as you know, Mark, my background is in ecology, and I've done a bit of farming, so I always tend to pick out those things. In The Guardian this morning, there's an interesting article about our temperate rainforests and all the interesting things that happen there. But what I sort of recognise is actually that land, that farmland, it sort of, leads on from the previous thoughts, really. It's quite valuable, and it's under prioritised, I think, by all governments as a resource. The other stories, one is about how farmers, this is in The Independent, how farmers are fighting the climate crisis and the opportunity for farmers to actually really contribute. They're often damned for looking after livestock and contributing to greenhouse gases, but actually there's real opportunity there to mitigate things. And as a profession, it's truly one of the greenest professions we can engage in. It's turning sunlight into resources. It's physical, it's engaging, and actually really under prioritized. So that's really sort of my stories. And the overarching thing, really, looking at how the US has sort of backed down on its potential commitments towards reducing climate change 2050. And of course, that's a real concern. It's a one-way trip, and even our own government, has targets, but yet no real policy towards achieving that target. I know there's a bill going into Parliament at the moment. One of our neighbouring MPs, Rod Savage, has put forward a bill. Her ticket came up, and it's the Nature and Climate Bill, which is basically asking that we have a strategy towards meeting that target, which is quite a hard thing to do, but I think, we should be able to afford to save our own planet. That's the underlying theme. And that comes into a lot of what we're talking about, really. What are our priorities? How do we actually have a sustainable future and still deliver quality of life? And things like housing are fundamental to that. The housing issue is a problem. It drives up the cost of living, and that then is sort of driving a lot of our economics and economic issues.
Thanks ever so much for that, Greg. We'll go over to you, Rob. What have you picked out for us, please?
A couple of things. The first one from the Telegraph's front page, and it was 97% of town hall staff are still working from home. And by implication, this is a negative article about people working from home. But I actually think it's been a tremendous change in our world to have the ability to work from home, have a flexible working life. The technology has changed beyond recognition. The fact that we're all here on video calls and at least 4 of us look like we're working from our home, it's great, isn't it? And the technology allows it. The world has changed in task-based operations and task-based jobs. Why not do it from home if it helps your work and your life, get that balance? So I think we've got to be very careful to be excessively critical about it. And particularly, the horse has bolted, it's there, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 5 days a week, for many roles, it's there. So I think instead of finding fault in it and being the fuddy-duddies who I want everyone back in the office because that's how I work, mentality is actually say, well, let's learn to work better at it. Let's learn to work with the technology better, to be able to check, monitor, work alongside, collaborate with our teams and our customers and our suppliers, so that it's not a bad thing, that we just learn to make more and more of it. Because as I say, I think the horse has bolted. I don't think you'll ever turn the clock back on it. 1, technology, and 2, the way most of us like to work, some or all of the time. So that's my first one, Mark.
It's funny though, if you talk to the councils a lot, and Andrew probably does a lot more than me, dealing with councils and planning, to try and get hold of anybody in the city, the county, is nigh on impossible. I have to deal with the comms teams, and nobody's there.
Nobody's at their desk. And what we used to do, particularly on large schemes that involve consultation very widely across towns and cities, is meet monthly with everybody involved, whether it's council planning and highway officers, environmental consultants, the politicians, all round a table, going through the challenges, working out the solutions, and having people across a table to go through the detail that you need to, because you need plans, you need people to articulate the concerns, you need architects, sometimes with a pen in the hand, you need to be there with your marker pen. Those things don't happen very often now. And that has slowed the planning system down tremendously. And so a part of this, reinvesting in our planning departments with more staff would also partly be that will mean they can engage face-to-face more regularly, because to push through these plans, they're going to have to. And so there are going to have to be changes to the way it works. And I would rather drive 4 hours to sit in front of somebody than spend half an hour on a Teams call. And I mean that most genuinely, because you get far more done in person than you would do on a matter like this than you would do over the television.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting it. Sorry. Carry on, Mark.
Go on, Rob. Go on.
I'm not suggesting it's the end all and be all working from home. I think it's an important part of the way we work. And I think we can get much, much better at it in terms of managing our day, our companies, our teams, and our relationships. But it certainly, Andrew, I'm with you. It doesn't take away from certain types of meetings and certain jobs. Just are just better done face to face, aren't they?
Yeah, I quite agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's thanks ever so much for that, guys. That's the paper roundup. David, let's bring you back in, please. Now, the government. So you and I talked quite a lot over the the last 6 months, whatever, the Labour government before it came into power, and now they are in power, and they put the 20% on, which is going to take place. Dropping in. Is it in January? Is that when
That's right.
when you're?
Yep.
So how are you mitigating that sort of additional cost to your parents who are going to have to pay these fees? What's the school done? What's the plan?
Well, looking at the school like a business, we obviously, like any business, had to try and make sure that the book's still balanced. So we've made some savings over the course of the last year. Some money will come back to us through being able to reclaim VAT that we've expended on capital goods. So we're passing that on to our parents as well. So we've managed to bring down our running costs to a point that when we add the 20% VAT on, it will actually only make a 9% net increase on the fees for the parents at King's. So we've worked really, really hard to make that happen. Every school obviously has its own balance book, and different schools have taken different approaches. I think we're probably the lowest in the area, or one of the lowest. Others have gone with 15-20%, and I think the national figure is 15% is the average increase in independent school fees that's being passed on.
It's a fair sort of that a lot of people would actually leave the schools, then the public sector would get flooded of into schools that didn't have places in the first place. Is that not happened then?
No, I'd say that absolutely has happened. At King's, we saw some pupils whose parents contacted us towards the end of the last academic year and said, we can see what's coming down the tracks and we need to kind of pull out now because it's not going to be sustainable. When you choose a place for your child, you're hoping if they come at 11 plus, they're going to be there for 7 years. So you've got to look on your spreadsheet at the costs over that length of time. And obviously 20% every year on top of the existing school fees is a very considerable amount of money. What we have seen though at King's is a couple of little sort of silver linings to the overall cloud. One is that there were more people competing for grammar school places this year, and therefore, unfortunately, more people were unsuccessful. And those children, of course, now need a school to go to. And at King's, because we're a day school, our fees are a bit lower than some of the day boarding schools around the area. So we actually saw an uptick in interest after the 11 plus results came out. And we've had our largest number of 11 plus applicants this year for several years. So that was unexpected and obviously was a benefit. But we've still got to see whether that turns into people signing up and committing for September 25.
Have you also seen people from, other more expensive independent schools changing and moving down to, to your school?
Yeah, that's definitely the case, because as a parent, if you can get a good education in one of 5 different institutions in Cheltenham, Gloucester area, then, if finances are something that you need to look at, then you'll probably choose the one which is best value for money.
Obviously, we're coming into Christmas. Kids all excited for it?
Yeah, absolutely. We always try and hold off too much excitement until the last week of term, which is next week. So we're being a bit grinchy this week, but next week it's the Christmas jumper day. It's the carol services. We have 4 amazing carol services in Gloucester Cathedral, and it will be chocolate and videos all the way to Christmas. Yeah.
I just want to say, by the way, if anybody knows, our daughter went to King's School as well. She's a teacher herself now, so we haven't done badly out of it, David. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go over to you, Rob. Rob, let's talk about everything IT, IoT. What is it, and how big a thing is it coming down the tracks here for all of us?
Right. So IoT is short for the Internet of Things, and that is really, in simple terms, using mobile data to connect machines to machines, or devices to devices. And it's a huge growing part of the marketplace today. In simple terms, in the UK, we've got 65 million people and about 65 mobile phone connections. If we look in the world today, we've got 15 billion machines now connected to each other, and that's looking to grow to about double by 2030. Simple examples. Well, anytime you use your phone to pay something on a Wi-Fi credit card machine, but where we're drop boxes, where you go to those Amazon drop boxes and they text you a code so you can unlock your box and get your parcel. From the windmills sending signals back to base camp to show they're still working. Car park meters, when to be able to pay, as opposed to find the old coins at the bottom of behind your seat in the car. That's all using mobile data behind the machine to talk to another machine to do it. And it's huge way of bringing huge efficiencies into your business once you start adapting that. And in the world we're currently talking about, without getting too political about needing to bring efficiencies into a business, it's one of those ways. And it's more and more businesses are finding ways to use this technology to bring that efficiencies into it. Our part in that is providing the mobile data connectivity to it. And traditionally that was put a Vodafone SIM or a O2 SIM or whoever it may be into the product so it can talk. But today, if you're one of those companies and you've got digital signage or windmills or whatever your product is spread around all the country, you don't particularly want to have to work out exactly which network you need based on coverage for every single location. So there's been an explosion of multi-net data SIMs. So a bit like when we go to France or something, or the Europe, roaming SIM cards which pick up the best signal from the best network, which makes total sense if you're spreading thousands of these machines across the country. So that, for us, it's a phenomenal growth part of our business at the moment, albeit much lower value than traditional mobile phone connectivities because it's just transferring small amounts of data. But yeah, so for us, that's a really interesting time at the moment, so seeing where this is going and knowing it's a useful part of bringing a lot of efficiency into a lot of businesses.
How much can it save, Rob? How much can it save a business? Have you worked that out? Is it 20, 30%? Is it just depends on what it is?
We can't get that much into it. It's down to each business to decide what product it's doing, putting these into.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Rob. Let's go over to you, Andrew. Great to have you on the show, as you know. So, Andrew, I'd like to talk to you about Five Valleys Shopping Centre. I mean, it's been eight years. It's been £30 million of regeneration. I'm going to go to share the screen with everybody, see if I can find it a second. Oops. Here it is. Hopefully you can all see that. That's your website. I mean, have you been working on the scheme all that time, Andrew?
Yes, I have. Yes, I was involved when we were first offered the opportunity and appraised the options for moving forward. So yes, it's been an enjoyable and challenging period of time. We've done a lot there and continue to want to improve the centre and finesse it to increase its attraction. But we've got challenges on the high street. It's a huge industry in Britain. It employs an enormous amount of people, and every high street in the country is under threat and under pressure. And we've got to look after our local high street, and we've got to prevent the expansion of out-of-town retail, which there are very few proposals around these days compared to what went on in the last 30 years. But we've got to improve the town centres. And what we want to do is, it's not just our centre, it's the whole of Stroud. How do we make that more attractive? It's things like the public realm. Can that be improved to make it a nicer visitor experience? Can those who have a stake in the town centre, whether it's independent shops, whether it's us as an owner of a shopping centre, it's bar and restaurant owners and the councils, can we come together and put on more events that are coordinated and that we join together in promoting the town together rather than as individuals? All of these things are needed, I think, as part of the protection of the town and to try and maintain its vitality and hopefully grow its vitality. And every town's got its own, USP, whether it's Stroud's strong independent sector, its fabulous Saturday market. We've got to try and work with that. And we as a centre, whilst we spent a lot of money, the majority of the new traders that have come into the centre have been independents. I think we've established 33 independent businesses, nearly all local people, family businesses, some of them working 7 days a week, working very, very hard in the street food market particularly. And there's a good example. We are open 7 days a week, but a lot of the town isn't. And I think there should be a conversation with others to see if we can achieve that and hopefully grow the town and attract more people actually from within its catchment, because Stroud's got a tremendous catchment, but people do shop out of it and perhaps don't visit their own town centre as much as we'd like them to.
That's really annoying to you, Andrew, because I know the area really quite well, and the banks opposite have closed as well, which obviously used to draw people in.
Yeah.
People, business owners who use cash now can't go to their local bank to cash up at the end of the evening either. It's a fundamental problem in the high street as well, isn't it?
There is. We've seen several closures, and we find that with some of our young businesses that they can't get an account from a high street branch to be able to cash up at the end of the day. So they're having to cash up in the post office or in their own personal building society accounts and transfer money, because the high street banks actually aren't looking to bank young businesses at the moment. They want to see them established, and that relationship with the bank manager, having a door to go through and sit for a meeting, is disappearing. And a lot of those young businesses have got online accounts where it's a process, it's not a relationship. So I think that there's huge challenges for smaller businesses around banking, and for the rest of us, it's they're voids in the high street. The one bank in particular, Barclays, it's opposite our entrance. It's a mess. It's an eyesore of a property. We've got a tenant on a fag end lease who just wants to see the lease expire. We've got a landlord who has probably got a bit of a shock, found that it's empty, rents are dropping, values are dropping. Somebody's going to catch a big cold there. And what we all really want to see is that property recycled and to become something new. What a restaurant, bar, an office, or a shop. But so there are challenges to get these vacant properties occupied, and challenges around the high street. Full stop. And I think we've empty rates that are penalising landlords when they've got they can do little about a vacating tenant or someone going bust. I mean, that it happens. It's happened to all of us. We've lost people. We lost Wilkinson's last year, and that was our biggest tenant by some way. And that's possibly an opportunity. It's also quite a costly property to manage. And we've been fortunate. We've managed to find a retailer who probably was going to vacate the town because their unit was too small, and we managed to upscale them and keep them and create more jobs as well.
Is the centre full? Sorry to stop you there, Andrew. Is the centre full now?
We've got one large unit basically, and one small one to let, which has currently got a temporary occupier in for Christmas. And we've got quite a lot of interest in both units. So we're hopeful by Easter we'll be fully let on the retail side. We've got some new offices which we let. Pilley, a legal conveyancing firm from Cheltenham, came in recently with solicitors, which is boosted the business community in Stroud, and as a result, Murray's estate agents have moved down from the top down to the bottom because they're the relationship with the legal firm, and they wanted a more prominent shop frontage. We are building some offices at the moment. We've just started to build a couple of infill retail units, which will have offices above, which will finish to a high spec, and we're hoping to attract more from the business community, because I think that's really quite important, having modern, accessible office space in the centre of town. There's still more to achieve, definitely, and it's all part of trying to create a thriving town centre.
I just think it's fantastic, and the food court itself is absolutely brilliant. I think you've done a wonderful job there, by the way. Congratulations. I don't know if the other guys.
The last unit, we might add, the last unit is let. It won't be being fitted out till January, but we've got one more unit to open there. So,
and who's it going to be?
It's going to be a retailer called the Biryani Pot. He's a fabulous chef. He's going to start fitting out in January, and he's going to be bringing Indian flavours to the centre.
Okay, sounds fantastic. Thanks ever so much for that, Greg. Well, that leaves a nice little link to you and your restaurant and the hospitality trade itself. I mean, goodness gracious, it's a tough business you're in, isn't it?
It's very tough. I would say we've had the Biryani Pot at the brewery as a pop-up. He's a great chef. It's really good fun. and really enjoying the Five Valley Centre. And again, because of how it brings those businesses and lots of people there. I went down last week before a gig, and it's just nice to see people getting together. And that is what our business is all about. It's interesting, we've all been talking about the economy, how the economy's been affecting our business, housing, policy, landscape development, and fundamentally, I think this is where the issue lies. And certainly in terms of global development, business and government relies on increasing GDP, increasing wages, increasing profitability, but resources in the globe is fairly finite. So the model is slightly flawed. And I think if government started looking at priorities that sort of improve quality of life. And we ask, well, what is quality of life? What makes us happy? What makes life, comfortable? Then we might start seeing a change of things. So, high streets, shops, places to meet are important. One of the most important things to us, is our shelter, our food, and the relationships we have. And there's very few places where we can go out and meet new people, sort of develop the fabrics of our community, meet our new partners, meet new friends. We go to the church less when not all of us have an allotment. So pubs, hospitality, those meeting places are really important. However, it's becoming, far more expensive to eat out, to go out, and we're sort of potentially losing those things. I mean, I have some faith that hospitality has prevailed forever, and I still think we all recognize it as a really important aspect of our lives. So we will, maintain it, but there will be casualties on the way.
How is the brewing business going? How are you finding things, Greg? Because it's an expensive process and time consuming.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like business, all over. It does feel fragile. It's incredibly competitive. I started 18 years ago with 700 breweries in the country. There were 6 in Gloucestershire. There's now 48 breweries in Gloucestershire and over 2,000 breweries across the UK. I would have said 2019 was probably the best year ever to be a drinker in the UK. There was so much choice. The competition meant quality was great. There's so many different beers. That competition has created a really great service and a really great product. As a result, as well, it's really marginal. The competition is on price. Everybody's got to produce a good beer. So you're getting good product for as little as possible. That means that there's going to be casualties on the way. And that is always going to be the case. Businesses are on a knife edge all the time, competing for whatever they can to beat the next. And it's always uncomfortable, So I think that is the way of things. And hospitality and breweries have always been really innovative. So I think we see, constant change, constant reinventing of what a hospitality venue looks like. It's interesting to see what the modern need is. And we are seeing sort of town pubs and bars moving towards keg, low alcohol, but still people want to go out and meet in some way, whatever it is that they're drinking. For the time being, beer is still part of that story.
Okay, Greg, very quickly, what's your best-selling beer, please?
Still budding by far. We sell twice as much budding as our next best-selling beer, Tom Long. I have to say, we've got Hoppy Dreer, Hop Drop, which is catching up, and we sell a lot of our lager too. And it's part of that changing scene.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. Really, really interesting there. And the hospitality is really important for younger people as well. That's the start in life, isn't it, David? If you're a young person, 16, 18, you kind of need the hospitality trade to get that foot in the door, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd agree with Greg about the value of people getting together and enjoying time together and socializing. And in schools, we really saw that in the pandemic, that when the children came back, they just weren't used to these sort of social bonds and interactions. And it's taken a few years to get them back to things as normal. But it's a difficult time to grow up as a child. And I think having a place to grow, a place to go with your family, spend time with your parents, your grandparents, cousins, all of that is really important too to wider society.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, well, thanks ever so much for that. We're going to do the pick of the punchlines now because we're kind of running out of time. Okay, Rob, we're going to start with you. Pick of the punchlines. What have you picked out for this week, please?
And two very quick ones. One, the Rose and Crown pub in Nymphsfield, and the community team hitting this milestone of hitting the £200,000 mark. Superb achievement from Matt Burke, Mike Hare, and their team. It's a pub local to me. It's close to my heart. It's in keeping with what we're all talking about, a community pub, and I think what they're doing is on the way to something really, really good. And I am one of the small time shareholders now in this pub, so I very much hope they meet their targets. So that's one, and the other one was just to say the Julian Dunkerton interview, which you did, I found fascinating. He's one of the modern day Gloucestershire superstar entrepreneurs. To hear him, his life story, the rock and roll ride he's going through, really good. So well done with that.
Oh, thanks very much. I appreciate that, Rob. But it was a great interview, and it came across as a really nice guy, actually. And I would just suggest, David, your sixth form, who's studying business studies, these big interviews, great opportunity from the horse's mouth, they say. Anyway, David, what have you picked out from Punchline, please? Thanks, Rob.
I was really pleased to see the story about Forest Green Rovers and the eco park down at Junction 13. We're very big on sport in our family and as a school as well. And there's so much pride, isn't there, in the county for Forest Green, for Cheltenham Town, for Gloucester City and so on in football, and obviously for Gloucester Rugby too. And so seeing that there's that £100 million investment was great news. I think sometimes your motorway junction developments can be an awful lot of concrete and tarmac, and they can look pretty unsightly. If the early designs are to be believed, then the increase in biodiversity that they're actually planning as part of it, the wooden stadium, the focus on sustainability, I think is really, really exciting. And a bit as Greg's described, it's so important to think of different models and different ways of doing things. We don't have to just keep mass producing everything and doing it all the same every time. So yeah, really exciting for young people and sports lovers and businesses and the environment too.
Okay. Andrew, what have you picked out for Punchline this week?
Well, I'm going with David, actually. I focus on the eco park, and two reasons really. One, high-tech office space, modern business park, hugely important for employment and the economy locally. And secondly, there's housing included and the leisure facilities. All of these things are important for growing an area to attract people in. We want to bring in the best people, and I think sport, leisure and business is a very good mix. So I think it's superbly impressive, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it come out of the ground.
Can you imagine that getting that through planning, Andrew?
I have to say, they've done a great job, because it's quite a big scheme, and in this, as I said earlier, getting people engaged in something of this scale, it must be very difficult. So yeah, hats off to them.
Yeah. No, thanks ever so much. Totally agree. Greg, what have you picked out then? We kind of got, by the way, we got this Stroud contingent today. It wasn't planned like that, but there you go. Feel slightly outnumbered, David. What have you picked out, Greg?
Well, I've picked out two stories, of course, that meet my interest. It's two pubs. One, the Gloucester Old Spot that is looking for. This is the Gloucester Old Spot at where is it? It's not the one in. It's Cheltenham, near the motorway, and it's got planning permission to extend its car park. It wants some motorhomes, people stay overnight. It's basically diversifying to continue. And there's another pub, the Bell Inn in Cheltenham, that is looking for planning to turn into housing. And I suppose I want to tie up everybody else's stories. For pubs, we talked about a community pub that is being bought by the community to save it. But actually, if we went to pubs and used them, then those pubs wouldn't get into that situation in the first place. And that's ideally what we want to do. And the other one's about planning. A pub is valued based on its turnover, on its potential value. And then if it gets put into housing, that's a different use class, and there's a real uplift in value. And we see that in pubs. We also see that in farmland, green land that's turned into development land suddenly has a huge uplift. And so those people with assets do really well, and the tenants always tend to be in servitude. And this is, again, a problem of our economics, and we're giving up our assets, and some people are getting richer and some people are getting poorer. So I would like to see any uplift through a change of planning to also feed into our public coffers as well. So rather than just by virtue of a decision that some people will get better off, that actually I think that should be a public good as well. That's my conclusion.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much. But my story of the week has to be the £100 million redevelopment, the eco park as well. It's actually a story we've followed a long time. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. I'd just like to thank my fantastic panel, our wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. If you like the show, please like, share and subscribe. But we'll be back again next week. So please carry on watching. It's all in the Punchline. Bye.